Hi everybody, welcome to our first virtual lesson. Today we're going to be covering section 7.3, which is solving equations using multiplication and division. Let's get started with a warm-up. Number 1 says determine whether the given value is a solution of the equation. So go ahead and determine whether x equals 4 is a solution to 2x plus 5 equals 13. And then solve the two equations listed afterwards. Go ahead and pause the video right here and submit your answers to me using the link in the video description below. Okay, let's get started. So we are going to be covering 7.3, and this is just going to be just like class. So if you don't have your notebook in front of you, I'm going to ask you to go get it, and I want you to write down what I'm writing in blue. So we're going to be doing 7.3, which is solving equations using multiplication and division, and I'm just going to write times and division. And the date is 3/18/20. Right. And let's get started. I want to go over one property that's going to be useful to us, and it's called the multiplicative inverse property. And this property tells us that if you take a number and you multiply it by its reciprocal, or remember, this means the flip of the fraction. So in this case, it would be 1/5 instead of 5/1. If you multiply a number by its reciprocal, you will always get 1. So if I have a fraction, let's say like 3/7, 3/7 times 7/3 will always give me 1. And this is because if I look at the numerators, 3 times 7, that's 21. And the denominators are also 21. And 21/21 equals 1. So basically, a number times its reciprocal equals 1. And this is going to come in handy for us a little bit later. All right, moving on. Let's say I had the equation 8k equals 24. So this is 8 times k equals 24. I think we all could figure out k has to be 3. But in order to show our work, we originally have 8 times k here. And remember that we want to undo whatever operation is happening. So the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So I'm going to divide both sides by 8 because I don't want that 8 there. I just want k. So if I divide this side by 8, I'm left with k. If I divide the right side by 8, I'm left with 3. So k equals 3, and that's good because that's what we expected. You should always do a little check at the end, even if you're pretty certain. So I'm going to say 8 times 3 because that's what I got for k. Does this equal ? 24? And indeed it does. So let's try another one. Let's say instead I have w divided by 4 equals 12. So this looks like a fraction. Remember, fractions are just division problems. So this is w divided by 4. And if it helps you, you can even write w divided by 4 equals 12 instead. So now I'm going to want to undo this division. So I'm going to multiply by 4 on both sides. And I get w equals 48. Seems kind of large, but let's check it just to make sure. So check. Down here, I'm going to start off with my original equation up here. So that's going to be w, which is now 48, divided by 4. Does this equal 12? Well, 48 divided by 4 does equal 12, so we are all set. Let's do one more before we take a little break. What if I had 2/3 times x equals 10? So usually I have multiplication here. I would want to divide. And we can do that. Let's see if we divide this by 2/3, divide this side by 2/3. Let's see what happens. Do you remember how to divide by fractions? We actually end up multiplying by the reciprocal. So we're going to have 2/3 x times 3/2 equals 10 divided by 2/3 is going to end up being 10 times the reciprocal, 3/2. So 2/3 times 3/2, oh, this looks a lot like the multiplicative inverse property that we just learned. 2 times 3 is 6, and 3 times 2 is 6, and I still have my x, I can't get rid of it, equals 10 times 3/2. How am I going to do that? I'm going to make my 10 into an improper fraction, so that's going to be 10 times 3 is 30, over 1 times 2 is 2. So let's simplify this a little bit. 6/6, that's just 1. So I have 1x on this side, which I can just write as x, and 30 divided by 2 is 15. So I already have my answer. X equals 15. Let's check it just to make sure. So check. Let's say I'm going to have 2/3 times 15, and I'm going to just go ahead and write this as 15/1, and I want to check if this equals 10. 2 times 15 is 30. 3 times 1 is 3. 30/3, is that equal to 10? Yes, it is. 30 divided by 3 is 10. So we're good. But let's say, like, I don't want to have to divide and then flip it to multiplication. So you can just skip right to this step down here. You don't even have to divide by 2/3 if you already know you're going to be multiplying by the reciprocal. So let's just do this one more time without dividing. So I have 2/3 x equals 10. I'm just going to go ahead, multiply by the reciprocal on both sides to save myself a step. At this point, I already know 2/3 times its reciprocal is going to give me 1. So I'm just left with x over here. That's 1x. And then on this side, this is going to be 10 times 3/2, which we already determined was 15. So basically, if you know you're going to have to multiply by the reciprocal, go ahead and just do it. It'll save you a little bit of time. All right, let's take a break. Okay, time for a wellness break. Let's get out of our chairs, stand up, and do 50 jumping jacks. Let's do one more type of problem together, and then I'll give you a few to practice on your own. Let's say I have a rectangle. Ooh, imagine this is a rectangle. And let's say that I know the area of this rectangle is 32 feet squared, 32 square feet. And I know that this side is 8 feet, but I don't know what this side is. I think we all could figure out this side has to be 4, but I want us to write an equation to solve for this. So we know that area of a rectangle equals length times width. So I would start with that, write that down. I know my area is 32. I also know that my length is x and my width is 8. So I'm going to fill in those values for length and width. So now I have a nice little equation I can use to solve. Again, pretty easy with these numbers, but sometimes it's nice to set up an equation when you have some decimals or some fractions, making it a little more complicated. So I'm going to solve for x, so that means I have to undo this multiplication right here. So I'm going to divide by 8, both sides, and I'm going to be left with 4 equals x. And let's just make sure, so if I know x equals 4 feet, I'm going to check to make sure that this works out. Length times width is 32. That is correct. 4 times 8 equals 32. So 4 feet is my answer. Okay, let's do some practice problems together here. So what if I gave you, I'm going to give you 3 problems to do, And after I write them, I want you to pause the video and try them yourself. So number 1, A divided by 8 equals 6. Number 2, 7p equals 56. And number 3, 3/5 x equals 9. Go ahead and pause the video right here, give these a try, and then hit play when you're ready. Okay, with this first one, we're dividing by 8, so I would multiply by 8 on both sides, and I would find that A equals 48. For number 2, I'm multiplying by 7, so I need to divide both sides by 7, and I am going to be left with P equals 8. And finally, down here, these are one of the ones where you can just multiply by the reciprocal. So if I multiply by 5/3, and I multiply by 5/3 over here, this portion right here will equal 1, leaving me with just x equals, and then over here I have 9, which is really like 9 over 1 times 5 over 3. 9 times 5 is 45, 1 times 3 is 3, 45 divided by 3 is 15. So x equals 15. And of course, you should always check these answers. If you have the ability to check, you definitely should. So here we go. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. Otherwise, we are finished with our lesson. Thank you for watching and being here with me. Go ahead and look back at your email. Make sure you know what IXL you're doing, what your homework is. But until next time, thanks for tuning in.